Welcome to Paranormal Pages. Let's get straight into the true scary stories. Story 1. The Glimpse. The first time it happened, I dismissed it as a trick of the light. It was late, well past midnight, and I had been poring over old family albums in the dim light of my study. The old house creaked around me, as if echoing the memories trapped within its walls. My eyes were heavy with exhaustion, and I had just closed them for a moment when I felt it, a presence, cold and intrusive, breathing against my face. My eyes snapped open, and there it was, a face, pale and distorted, hovering just inches from mine. I recoiled, heart pounding, and the face vanished as quickly as it had appeared. For a moment, I sat frozen, unable to move or breathe. The rational part of my mind tried to assert control, convincing me it was just a hallucination brought on by fatigue. I forced myself to take deep breaths, to calm down. "It's nothing," I muttered to myself. "Just tired." But the feeling of being watched lingered. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was not alone in that room. The shadows seemed to grow darker, the air colder. I decided it was best to call it a night and headed upstairs to my bedroom, casting nervous glances over my shoulder the entire way. As I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. Every creak and groan of the house set my nerves on edge, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes. The next day, I tried to carry on as usual, but the experience haunted me. I kept seeing that face in my mind's eye, its hollow eyes and twisted mouth etched into my memory. I began to question my sanity. Was it stress from work? Perhaps the recent move to this old family estate was taking a toll on my psyche. I resolved to keep busy, hoping that distraction would help. But the sightings continued. At first, it was only when I closed my eyes, usually late at night. The face would appear, always the same, gaunt, pale, and terrifyingly close. It never spoke, never moved, just stared at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I began to dread sleep, and my insomnia worsened. I could feel the strain it was putting on my body and mind. Weeks passed, and the situation grew more dire. I began to see the face even with my eyes open. It would flash in the corner of my vision, or reflect in the glass of a window. Once, I saw it in the mirror as I brushed my teeth, its vacant eyes boring into mine. I screamed and dropped the toothbrush, backing away in terror. The face disappeared, but the damage was done. I was no longer sure of what was real and what was not. Desperation led me to seek help. I confided in a friend, Dr. Allen, a psychiatrist who specialized in sleep disorders. He listened patiently as I described the face and the relentless torment it brought. "It sounds like you're experiencing hypnagogic hallucinations," he said, "visions that occur as you're falling asleep. They're not uncommon, especially under stress. But it's happening when I'm awake," I insisted. "It's like it's crossing over." Dr. Allen prescribed medication to help me sleep and suggested a series of relaxation techniques. I followed his advice religiously, clinging to the hope that it would provide relief. But the face persisted, growing bolder with each passing night. And now, it was beginning to invade my days, appearing more frequently and with increasing clarity. One evening, as I sat in my study, I saw it again. This time, it did not vanish immediately. The face lingered, solid and undeniable. I could see every detail, the sunken cheeks, the dark circles under its eyes, the cracked lips. And then, for the first time, it spoke. "Help me," it whispered, its voice like a death rattle. "Please, help me. Hey, subscribe for more scary stories." I stared, dumbstruck, at the face before me. It hovered in the air, its eyes pleading and desperate. "Help me," it repeated, and this time, I could see the moisture in its eyes, the sheer agony etched into its features. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the thudding of my heartbeat. The face blinked, and for a moment, I thought it might vanish again. But it didn't. Instead, it seemed to grow more solid, more real. "My name is William," the face said. "I lived here, a long time ago." My mind raced. The house had been in my family for generations, passed down through the years. I tried to recall any mention of a William, but nothing came to mind. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. William's face contorted in pain. "I'm trapped," he said. "I've been trapped here for so long. You must help me find peace." "How?" I asked, feeling a surge of both pity and fear. "What can I do?" "Find my body," William said. "Bury me properly. Only then can I rest." The words sent a chill down my spine. The idea of finding a corpse hidden somewhere in the house was horrifying, but I couldn't ignore the desperation in William's voice. "Where is it?" I asked. "In the basement," he said. "Behind the old furnace. Please, hurry." And with that, the face faded, leaving me alone in the dimly lit study. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. It seemed impossible, but there was a haunted look in William's eyes that I couldn't forget. I knew I had to do something. That night, armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I made my way down to the basement. The air was musty, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. I approached the old furnace, a hulking piece of machinery that hadn't been used in decades. My hand shook as I shone the flashlight behind it. The beam of light revealed a narrow space, cluttered with old boxes and debris. I steeled myself and began to move the obstacles aside. After what felt like an eternity, I uncovered a small, hidden alcove. And there, wrapped in a decaying sheet, was a skeleton. I gasped and stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The sight was more gruesome than I had imagined, the bones brittle and covered in a thick layer of dust. But there was no mistaking it, this was William. I felt a mix of horror and pity as I looked at the remains. This man had been trapped here for so long, his soul unable to find peace. I knew I had to help him, no matter how terrifying the task. I carefully gathered the bones, trying to treat them with the respect they deserved, and placed them in a sturdy box. The next morning, I arranged for a proper burial. I chose a spot in the family cemetery, a peaceful area under the shade of an old oak tree. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For a while, things seemed to improve. The face no longer appeared, and I began to sleep through the night again. But the peace was short-lived. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt the familiar coldness return. I opened my eyes, and there it was, William's face, inches from mine. "You failed," he whispered, his voice filled with a new kind of torment. "It's not enough. You must find the others." "Others?" I gasped, sitting up in bed. "What do you mean?" "There are more," William said. "More like me, trapped in this house. You must find them all." The room seemed to spin, and I clutched the sheets, feeling the terror seep into my bones. The task was far from over, and the true horror was only just beginning. The weight of William's words crushed my hope. "More like me," he had said, and the thought of more trapped souls sent shivers down my spine. But there was no turning back now. I had made a commitment to see this through, no matter how horrifying the journey. The following day, I started researching the history of the house, delving into old records and family journals. The stories I uncovered were chilling. There were accounts of strange disappearances, unexplained deaths, and rumors of the house being cursed. Each entry seemed to weave a tapestry of terror, connecting the dots between the restless spirits and the old mansion. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide a pair of eyes, every whisper of the wind a call for help. I decided to confront the presence directly, hoping to gain some clarity. "William," I called out into the darkness. "Are you here?" The air grew colder, and there he was, his face materializing before me. "Yes," he said. "And so are the others." "Where do I start?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "The attic," William replied. "It's where she was kept." "She." The word hung in the air like a ghost itself. I made my way to the attic, a place I had always avoided. The door creaked open, revealing a space thick with dust and forgotten memories. Old furniture and trunks were strewn about, covered in cobwebs. The air was stifling, and the darkness seemed almost tangible. I started searching, moving boxes and peering into corners. My flashlight beam fell on an old trunk, its surface scarred and worn. I opened it, and there, among the remnants of a bygone era, was a small diary. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. It belonged to a girl named Elizabeth. Her entries spoke of fear and isolation. She wrote about being confined to the attic by a cruel guardian, punished for reasons she couldn't understand. The final entries were the most disturbing, describing her growing desperation and the haunting presence she felt in the shadows. Her last words were a plea for help, scrawled in a shaky hand. "I don't want to be alone anymore." I felt a pang of sorrow for Elizabeth. Her spirit, trapped by fear and suffering, was crying out for release. "Elizabeth," I whispered, "I will help you." That night, as I prepared for bed, I felt her presence. The air grew heavy, and the temperature dropped. "Elizabeth?" I called softly. She appeared, her face delicate and sorrowful. "Please," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "I need to be free." "How can I help you?" I asked, determined to ease her suffering. "Find my locket," she replied. "It holds my essence. Destroy it, and I will be free." The next day, I scoured the attic again, searching for the locket. It took hours, but finally, hidden in a crack in the floorboards, I found it, a small, ornate piece of jewelry, tarnished with age. Holding it in my hand, I felt a strange connection to Elizabeth, as if her very soul was intertwined with the delicate chain. With a heavy heart, I took the locket to the backyard. As I stood over a small fire, I hesitated. Destroying it felt wrong, but I knew it was the only way to set her free. I dropped the locket into the flames, and as it melted away, I heard a soft sigh, almost like a breath of relief. That night, Elizabeth appeared to me one last time. "Thank you," she said, her face serene. "You have freed me." But my relief was short-lived. William's face appeared beside hers, his expression grim. "There are still more," he said. "You must help them all." I felt the walls closing in, the weight of the task ahead nearly unbearable. The house was a prison for these souls, and it was my duty to release them. As I prepared for the next search, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The realization that my task was far from over weighed heavily on me. Each spirit freed seemed to intensify the presence of those still trapped. I could feel the house itself pulsing with restless energy, as if it were a living entity begging for release. The final confrontation was inevitable, and I steeled myself for what lay ahead. William's face appeared again, more solid and more human than before. "There are 3 more," he said. "Their pain binds them here. You must release them all, or none of us can find peace." "Where do I find them?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "The nursery," he said. "Start there." The nursery. I had always avoided that room, with its faded wallpaper and broken toys. It was a place of sadness, and now I understood why. The door creaked open, revealing the remnants of a child's world frozen in time. Dolls with cracked faces stared from dusty shelves, and a small rocking horse stood still in the corner. I began to search, moving methodically through the room. Under the floorboards, behind the old dresser, in the closet, nothing. Frustration gnawed at me until I noticed a loose board under the window. I pried it up, revealing a small box. Inside were the belongings of a child, a pair of shoes, a tiny dress, and a silver rattle. A cold breeze swept through the room, and I felt her presence. "Hello?" I called out softly. A girl appeared, no older than 5, her face pale and sad. "My name is Mary," she said. "I want to go home." "How can I help you, Mary?" I asked, my heart breaking for her. "Take my things to the old oak tree," she whispered. "Bury them there. It's where I used to play." I did as she asked, digging a small hole beneath the tree and laying her belongings to rest. As I covered them with earth, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Mary's face appeared, smiling gently. "Thank you," she said. "I'm free now." Back in the house, William's face appeared again, alongside another, a man, stern and sorrowful. "He was the caretaker," William said. "His name is Henry. He was murdered and framed for crimes he didn't commit. His spirit cannot rest until his name is cleared." I felt a pang of sympathy for Henry. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Find his journal," Henry said. "It contains the truth." The study held the answers. I searched through the dusty bookshelves and old desks until I found a hidden drawer. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Henry's meticulous handwriting. It detailed the events leading up to his death, proving his innocence. I took the journal to the local authorities, who reopened the case and cleared Henry's name. That night, Henry appeared, his face peaceful. "Thank you," he said. "You have given me justice. I can rest now." One last spirit remained. William led me to the cellar, a dark and foreboding place. "Her name is Margaret," he said. "She was the housekeeper, accused of witchcraft and hanged. Her spirit seeks vengeance, but she must be forgiven to find peace." I found Margaret's spirit, her face twisted with anger and sorrow. "You seek to free me?" she snarled. "Yes," I said, standing my ground. "You deserve peace." Her eyes softened, and tears welled up. "I was wronged," she said. "My only crime was caring for this house and its people." "I forgive you," I said, feeling a weight lift from my heart. "You are free." Margaret's spirit began to dissolve, her face peaceful at last. As she disappeared, I felt the house release a collective sigh, the energy shifting to one of tranquility. William appeared one final time, his face glowing with gratitude. "You have done it," he said. "We are free." "Thank you." The house was finally at peace, its restless spirits released from their torment. As I stood in the now quiet halls, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. But as I turned to leave, a cold breeze swept through, and a new face appeared in the shadows. "You think it's over?" the face whispered, its eyes burning with malevolence. "It's only just begun." The words chilled me to the bone. The true horror was yet to come. Subscribe for more true scary stories. Story 2. The Whispering Door. When I first inherited my grandmother's old house, I felt more burdened than blessed. Nestled in the heart of a dense, brooding forest, the house had an air of neglect and mystery. Its dark wooden walls, sagging roof, and windows that seemed to follow me with every step added to the sense of unease. I intended to sell it off quickly, but something about the place kept me from listing it immediately. The cellar was the last part of the house I explored. Descending the creaky wooden stairs, a chill ran down my spine. The air was damp and cold, filled with the musty scent of age and decay. Old, rusted tools and broken furniture cluttered the space, but what caught my eye was a peculiar door at the far end of the cellar, half hidden behind a stack of rotting crates. It was unlike any other door in the house, smaller, with intricate carvings of symbols I didn't recognize, and an aura that seemed to whisper secrets. I moved the crates aside, my curiosity piqued. The door had no handle, just a keyhole. Searching the cellar, I found an old key hanging from a nail on the wall, as if it had been waiting for me. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark, narrow passageway leading into the unknown. My heart pounded as I stepped through the door. The walls of the passageway were lined with ancient, crumbling bricks, and the air grew colder with each step. I reached the end of the passageway and found myself in a small, circular room. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table with a single candle burning brightly. The flame flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. On the table lay an old, leather-bound book, its cover adorned with more of those strange symbols. I approached the table, my eyes fixed on the book. As I reached out to touch it, the candle suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for my flashlight. When I finally managed to turn it on, the room was empty. The book, the table, even the candle, all gone. My breath quickened as I turned to leave, but the passageway had vanished. I was trapped. Desperation clawed at my mind as I searched for any way out. My flashlight beam fell on another door, identical to the first, on the opposite side of the room. With no other options, I approached it and tried the key again. The door opened to reveal the cellar once more, but everything felt different, colder, darker, more sinister. I hurried back upstairs, slamming the cellar door shut behind me. For days, I tried to convince myself it was all a hallucination, a trick of the mind. But at night, I could hear it, the faint sound of the doorknob turning, as if someone, or something, was trying to get out. The whispers grew louder, filling the house with their insidious presence. Sleep became impossible, and fear gnawed at my sanity. The house, once merely unsettling, had become a prison of dread. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers grew more persistent. Each night, they echoed through the house, filling the air with a sense of foreboding. My nights were spent lying awake, listening to the relentless turning of the doorknob and the soft, insidious murmurs from the cellar. Exhaustion weighed heavily on me, but fear kept me from leaving. I felt tethered to the house, as if the whispers had woven an invisible chain around my soul. Determined to confront whatever lay behind that door, I armed myself with knowledge. I pored over my grandmother's old journals, hoping to find some clue about the house's dark secret. Her writings were filled with cryptic references to the other side and guardianship. One entry, in particular, caught my attention. She wrote of a hidden door in the cellar, a gateway to a place where the past and present merged, and where lost souls wandered. She warned of the dangers of opening the door, of the spirits that sought escape. One evening, as I read by the dim light of a flickering candle, the whispers grew louder. They seemed to be calling my name, beckoning me to the cellar. Summoning every ounce of courage, I descended the stairs, flashlight in hand. The air was thick with an oppressive chill, and the shadows seemed to dance around me. I approached the door, the whispers now almost deafening, and placed my hand on the cold wood. "Show yourself," I demanded, my voice trembling. The door creaked open on its own, revealing the same narrow passageway. This time, I noticed a faint, eerie glow emanating from the room at the end. Steeling myself, I stepped inside. The room was unchanged, the same circular walls, the same oppressive atmosphere. But now, ghostly figures flickered in and out of existence, their mournful eyes watching me with a mixture of sorrow and longing. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. One of the figures stepped forward, its form more solid than the others. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes filled with unspeakable pain. "We are trapped," she said, her voice echoing in the confined space. "Bound by the curse of this house. You must set us free." "How?" I asked, my heart pounding. "How can I help you?" She pointed to the book that had reappeared on the table. "Read the words," she said. "Break the seal. But be warned, once the seal is broken, there is no turning back." I approached the table, my hands shaking as I picked up the book. The symbols on the cover seemed to writhe and pulse under my touch. Taking a deep breath, I opened it and began to read the incantation inscribed within. The words were ancient and strange, and as I spoke them aloud, the room began to tremble. The figures grew more distinct, their forms solidifying. The walls of the room seemed to warp and twist, and a blinding light filled the space. I felt a surge of power, an energy coursing through me that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The spirits cried out in unison, their voices mingling with the whispers that now filled my mind. As I finished the incantation, the light intensified, and the room exploded with a force that knocked me to the ground. When I opened my eyes, the figures were gone, and the room was once again dark and silent. The book lay at my feet, its pages blank and lifeless. I staggered to my feet, my mind reeling from the experience. I made my way back up to the cellar, every step a struggle. The house was eerily silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I heard it, the sound of the doorknob turning once more insistent than ever. The whispers were back, louder and more desperate. The following night, the whispers turned into wails. I could no longer ignore the relentless turning of the doorknob. Each twist sent shivers down my spine, the sound resonating through the empty halls of the house. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by the constant dread that something on the other side of that door was growing more impatient, more powerful. Desperation led me to seek help. I contacted an old friend, Miriam, who specialized in the occult. When she arrived, her eyes widened at the sight of the house. "This place is steeped in dark energy," she said, her voice low. "Whatever you did, it has awakened something ancient and angry." We descended into the cellar together, her presence providing a small comfort. She examined the door, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings. "These symbols are wards," she explained. "They were meant to keep something inside. By breaking the seal, you've unleashed it." Miriam set up a protective circle around the door, lighting candles and placing various talismans at the points. She began to chant softly, her words a soothing counterpoint to the increasingly frantic whispers. As her chant grew louder, the door began to shake, and a cold wind whipped through the cellar, extinguishing the candles one by one. "Miriam!" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. "Stay inside the circle," she yelled back, her voice strained. "Whatever happens, do not leave the circle." The door flew open with a thunderous crash, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. Shadows spilled into the room, coalescing into the shape of a tall, imposing figure. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its presence filled the cellar with an overwhelming sense of malevolence. "Who dares to defy the ancient seal?" the figure intoned, its voice a deep, resonant echo. Miriam's chant faltered, and she fell to her knees, the strain of the ritual evident on her face. I stepped forward, driven by a mix of fear and determination. "It was me," I said, my voice shaking. "I released you. What do you want?" The figure's gaze fixed on me, its eyes burning into my soul. "Freedom," it hissed. "For centuries, we have been imprisoned in this wretched place, bound by the seal your ancestor created. You have broken the seal, but the price must be paid." "What price?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Your soul," it replied, a cruel smile spreading across its face. "In exchange for our freedom, you must take our place. Only then will we be released from this torment." "No!" Miriam cried, struggling to her feet. "There must be another way." The figure's smile widened. "There is no other way," it said. "The choice has been made." Before I could react, the shadows surged forward, enveloping me in their cold embrace. I felt my consciousness slipping away, my body growing numb. The last thing I saw was Miriam's anguished face, her desperate pleas echoing in my ears as the darkness consumed me. When I awoke, I was no longer in the cellar. I found myself in the same circular room, but it was now filled with a strange, ethereal light. The spirits were there, their forms solid and real. They looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "You have freed us," the woman said, stepping forward. "But now you are bound to this place." I looked down at my hands, seeing them fade and flicker like the spirits before me. I was no longer human, no longer alive. I was a part of the house now, a guardian of the seal. The door behind me closed with a final, resounding thud, and the whispers began anew. The end. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.